Welcome to the Daily Influence, where our mission is to deliver a daily dose of positive influence that can uplift you personally or be shared within your sphere of influence. While not every episode may directly apply to your unique circumstances, we strive to provide insights and inspiration relevant to most people's daily, weekly, and monthly lives. Whether you are tuning in during the morning, noon, or night, the Daily Influence is here for you. Listen, share, and embrace the power of influence in your life.
Happy New Year. Welcome to Daily Influence. I'm Gregg-Brooke Koleno. Thank you for joining us for your daily dose of positivity. I'm excited to kick off the new year with my friend, Ramey Miller. She's the founder of Run Deep Coaching, a holistic personal and business coaching service. With a Master of Science in International Human Development, Society, and Education, and specialized training in conflict resolution, Ramey is dedicated to guiding individuals and businesses towards enhanced flow, wellness, and fulfillment. Her coaching philosophy emphasizes self-reflection, mindfulness, and the transformation of unproductive patterns, aiming to foster long-lasting, meaningful change. Ramey is so aligned with our philosophies here at the I Am Team series, and I'm so excited to kick off the new year with Ramey. Ramey, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. It's totally my pleasure.
Ramey, could you share a bit about yourself and the journey that led you to where you are today and to establish Run Deep Coaching?
Yes, I get this question a lot. And it all started with about 10 years ago when I hired my coach, Morgan Northway. I was going through a divorce and I just kind of started running to kind of manage my emotions and feelings. And I would literally just not try, I would just get my shoes on and go. And then every once in a while, I would have all this emotion during my run, and I would just kind of stop and literally cry because there was so much going on in my life at the time. And it's really how I dealt with life. And so it became sort of a thing where I was telling my friends about it. And they're like, I would love for you to join one of my runs and kind of help me with this process. And I was like, sure. So it kind of started it's called Run Deep because it originally was a running coaching company. So I would literally coach people while running. Moved to Illinois, closer to my family, and dropped the running and just kept the coaching part. So not a big fan of running in cold weather. So I was in California at the time when I started all of this. So, but my coach really helped me realize this is actually kind of a calling that I had, was to really help people through challenging life situations.
Thank you for sharing your personal story with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Ramey, how does your background in conflict resolution and human development inform your approach to coaching individuals?
It's such a good question. So when I went back to school, I actually almost did social work. Instead, I did international human development. And simplified, it is the belief that humans are made of different habits, behaviors, and patterns. And so if you really take that apart, there's always going to be issues with one of those things with humans, right? So if we want to change something, we kind of have to look and see how we're actually living our lives. What are our values? Are our habits aligned to our values? So my education in conflict management has a lot to do with sometimes we need to have difficult conversations with people. Sometimes we need to do some self-reflection on how we can better the situation. So a lot of it is conflict management is always kind of in there somewhere. But it always comes back to habits, behaviors, and patterns. And we are all a series of those things, and that equals our entire life. So it's really important that we make those count. And so I really help people have those tough conversations, figure out where they're getting off track with their habits and where they're not aligned with their values. Um, and sometimes it's also in the feeling realm of like we haven't felt our feelings or we haven't dealt with our feelings, because those are also a part of who we are and also part of our habits and patterns and behavior. So um, that's kind of how it correlates. I really studied groups of people and how they can use their resources to support themselves. And it's really the same with each individual. It's no different. So I do a lot of question asking. I do a lot of understanding of the person, their environment, the way that they were raised, and how that has affected them as an adult, and figure out where that stopgap is.
That's great. I love how you take what you learned through your studies and apply it to the work that you do with your clients and looking at the habits and patterns and behaviors of each one individually, and really get a good understanding. In your experience, what are some common challenges individuals face when trying to align their personal growth with business objectives? And how do you assist them in overcoming these obstacles?
Yeah, I spent some time on this question because there's so many things I could probably talk about, but there's kind of three main things if I were to really focus on those. Um, the number one thing over the last decade that is the most challenging for people is really taking a deep look at themselves. I think when you go to a therapist or you come to a coach, it's a lot of times it's about um, the blame is being put on someone else, right? This person's causing this to happen to me. And the amazing part about our lives is that we have a lot of power, and we have power in our decisions, time, and energy. So that is all up to us. And we forget that sometimes. And then the second one is really just a fresh perspective. We see things through our lens. Confirmation bias, implicit bias, right? Those are all real things. And sometimes we need someone to come along and really bump us out of that mindset. And family members, friends, they might be too much ingrained into our everyday lives to do that. So that's why a coach or a therapist or just a third party is so helpful in saying, how about this? How about this? And then one of them will click. You'll be like, that's it. Like, that's more aligned with me. And it's up to my clients to really figure out what that alignment is. But I help really push them a little bit outside of how they would normally think and feel. Some people, they struggle. They haven't been challenged before. And so that can be kind of a vulnerable place for them to go. And so I really take my time with them. It's a big challenge for people. And I think the third thing is prioritizing time for themselves, because it all starts and ends with us. And first of all, people don't always understand the correlation between lack of self-care and success in life. They're directly correlated because everything stems from our heart, our head. And if those things are not where we want them to be, with aligning to our values, aligning to time and energy, the people we surround ourselves with at work and in our life, then we're going to struggle because it's not in alignment. And we're going to keep kind of hitting our head against the wall. So really slowing down with yourself. And that could be anything, right? It could be reading. It doesn't have to be going to the spa, I think, like we all think. It could just be Netflixing, going on a walk. And I teach people what works for, we try different things. And you'd be shocked at how creative we can get, right? With what that looks like, for them to feel like they have alignment in their their lives. So those are kind of the three things. I teach a lot of tools. I share a lot of resources. We role play. There's all kinds of things that I bring. Sometimes I'll literally refer them for a specific thing to another coach if I know they're really good at that. So I really try to holistically teach them so they don't have to keep hiring a coach. They can take it and go and live their life. So, but the biggest piece I think is just start small. That's what I always teach. Like if you go in too hard, too fast, that's why people fail at things. They get really overwhelmed. The habits don't stay. So just tiny little bits at a time is super important for success.
That is all great advice. On your first one, taking a deep look at yourself, we talk about that in the I Am Team series. And I believe it was in our first book, Individual Influence, Find the I Am Team. And talking about self-reflection, we actually recommend people that we work with to sit down and take like a composition book or a journal. And on each of the page of the book, write the year you were born. And each page would be the next year of your life. So, starting at birth all the way through today. And then on that page, write down whatever you can remember from that year. Obviously, your year of birth, you're not going to remember anything, but on that, you could write down where you were born, maybe the time you were born, and so on. And as you do this exercise, and, it's not something you do in one sitting. You just do it over time, and you may flip through different pages and write different things down as different thoughts. Yeah. It's a great way to take a deep look at yourself and look at your life and find anything that's happened in your past that is like triggering things today, which can then give you a fresh perspective. And then prioritizing the time for yourself. Yeah. So that's a trick that we use, or a tip that we teach our clients. So
yeah, I'm totally using that. That's so smart to see what's like sitting top of mind, for that year. Cause we do have a hard time remembering things. And sometimes we forget the good stuff because we're so focused on the negatives. So I really love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So can you provide an example of how self-reflection and mindfulness practices have empowered an individual to enhance their contributions to a team?
Yeah, I over the years I've done this, there's one person I've worked with the longest, and we're going on 5 years, which is amazing. He keeps kind of moving up in his career. He's very ambitious. And of course, every time you move up, there's new challenges, there's new sets of people. So recently, we were in a coaching session, and he was like, wow, I just, from us talking, I realized that I'm bending over backwards for this particular customer in my job that, first of all, it's kind of outside of our business practices to do what I'm doing. It's outside the time frame of what, I should be spending time on other customers, right, that are higher producing. But I keep doing it. Why? And we kind of dug deep, and he's truly like a people pleaser. He seeks approval from outside sources to kind of fill some of the void from his childhood. And it really also feels good with his ego. So as it all does, when we're needed, it feels great, So I went over some negotiation skills, right, of how to say no, push back in a professional way. We also started some guided meditation practices as well to really help him start targeting the root problem of just his worth being connected to the customer's approval. And so those are two things we worked on for a while. This doesn't just disappear overnight. So he did have the courage to have the conversation with the customer, and shockingly, right, they were like, okay, they really didn't care. They were just trying to get as much out of him as they could, and they realized there's a limit. And then he spent that time on other higher producing customers and was really close to not meeting his goal for each one, but did meet it. And we were talking about how that conversion of time probably pushed him over the edge of meeting his H1 goal, right? So sometimes it's not close, sometimes it is, but that helps the whole team reach their goal for H1. And he shared the story too, to make sure that he went over, the fact that sometimes we just have to have these tough conversations and it's really scary and you go in with a lot of fear sometimes, but you just have to name the fear and just know it's not most of the time. What's the worst? I would say, what's the worst that can happen? Right. They're going to say like, we're going to pull all the business, this was a national account. So that would be tremendously unusual for that to happen. Right. So, but I do think he has learned so much from those small things that have happened over time. And he's much, much less of a people pleaser. His tendency now is to kind of put boundaries up and follow those versus kind of go back for approval and people please. So I think that's truly the win and it enhances his team more than anything else. But yes, we need to reach our goals. That's how he's paid. But it's also really helped him as a person.
That's a great story. And it's so important that, it's the boundaries and setting those boundaries, whether it's with your clients or your coworkers or your family or anyone in your life really is setting those boundaries. And the majority of the time, people are going to accept those boundaries. And that's a perfect example where his client accepted his boundaries.
Yes. And I think in business too, most people aren't going to like lash out, right? Like in our families, there's more of that fear that somebody's going to like go off the deep end on us or, have a big reaction that's going to trigger us. But in business, people are polite most of the time. And so they may not like love it, but they're not going to scream and yell and, so I think it's really important to learn how to do it tactfully, professionally. And you'll be shocked at how that actually can help you in so many ways, especially in sales.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Ramey, what message or words of encouragement would you like to share with our listeners who aspire to make a positive difference in the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, right? And I think the biggest thing I want to share with this is that if you have been thinking of any way to make a positive difference, a lot of times people are waiting on someone to give them permission to do it. So today I'm giving you permission to do it scared, to do it unprepared, to do it without knowing everything. Because sometimes the biggest way we can make an impact is to do things scared and take those risks. And I also want to give you, the audience, permission to have lots of love and grace for yourself so that you can then give that love and grace to others. Because that's something we just need more of with ourselves and others in this world. So that's really easy way to make a positive difference without a whole lot of investment.
Great advice for the new year. Thank you. Ramey, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your advice with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
If you want to get in touch with Ramey, we'll put her contact information in the show notes. Thank you for being with us and starting your 2025 off on the right foot. If today's episode inspired you, make us a part of your routine by subscribing on your favorite platform and share it with those around you to spread the positivity. We appreciate your support. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.